it was this, and actually it was the turning point for the business. So you just fill the room with that positive energy of those stories of when they've been able to, in their own lives, move from victim to transformer. And that allows people to get to that point of self-belief that we are capable of doing this. So how do we get going, Mark? And then you lead into, to your point about, that's the mindset bit addressed. You then have the methodology, which is, how do I get started? And that's when these tools like, well, let's identify the path dependencies and all the habitual behaviors that are holding us back. Let's do that exercise. Let's develop some propelling questions for the business. What are the critical constraints that you have that you constantly feel that are limiting you? Put those at the heart of the conversation, couple them to those ambitions, create those propelling questions, and have those be the focus for the business and for this exercise. And then use the third important tool here is can-if thinking. I should talk a little bit about that, if you like.
Yeah, well, actually, that was I wanted to touch on one more thing on personality traits, but can-if, yeah, it's a huge one that I'm hopping in my seat to get to. While you're on personality traits a little bit, because something you said made me think about, again, people that I know and work with, and at times kind of want to shake a little bit to move. A lot of even creative people are comfortable with baby step, kind of incremental thinking, while others have this big leap mindset about every action. Can you touch on some of the strengths and weaknesses and how they work for and against the process a little bit?
So if the question is, what's the role of kind of big leaps of faith and big jumps and big moves versus incremental improvements and specific, I think that, we're kind of agnostic about which of those is valuable, because for sure, a lot of these case studies that we saw in the book are about people persisting. So the whole chapter on activating emotions, which addressed this idea of, sometimes you get lucky in a workshop, in a thought process, in a brainstorm, and you create an idea that you just go, oh, boom, there's the solution. And I'll tell you a couple of those in a moment if you want. And sometimes it doesn't work that way. Sometimes, it's about persistence. It's about going back again and again and again to the same problem. And the psychologists will tell you that the most productive way to go back again and again to a seemingly intractable problem is to periodically bludgeon it to death and then take a step away, give yourself some perspective. They call it the shift from local to global processing. So stepping back gives you global processing. It opens up your frame of reference again. The book or any piece of stimulus is really valuable. You go back to that book, read again. Well, what was it that those guys at IKEA did? Gives you a little bit of new stimulus to go back to your particular problem. So persistence and baby steps and making marginal improvements and figuring out an aspect of it but not the whole piece is an inevitable part of this problem-solving journey. And I suspect that, we could both tell each other stories about how that's been the case of working on a project for month after month after month, making marginal improvements, each of those marginal improvements being really essential to eventually something opens up for you. But you couldn't have got the thing to open up without having done the hard work and the grind. So persistence, grit, we talk about that in the book quite a bit as well, and the work of Angela Lee Duckworth, who's the grit professor. Right. But at the same time, the benefit of using a can-if map. So the can-if map, and this gets to, how do you create those leaps? How do you travel quite a distance in one move? So the can-if map basically says, okay, so across all these different case studies we've looked at, and there were 35 interviews, and there was about 80 different cases in the book that we were using as our body of work here. There seemed to be some consistent themes across them that we can cluster together. And that led us to sort of what we call the can-if map. It's the 9 typical things that we see. And I'll list off some of these and how it works for you, because this is how you can, I think, as a business, potentially create a bit of a leap. So, there are many cases in the book where people had thought about introducing something entirely new into a conversation to change the way they thought of it. So the easiest story here, I think, simplest story here, is about the London 2012 Olympics. So this is a group that has decided it cannot compete with Beijing in terms of wow and fireworks and that kind of stuff and birds' nest stadiums. The London 2012 Olympics is going to be the best spectator experience. In part, that's one of the things that's going to be a signature aspect of the London 2012 Games. But they recognize fairly close to the event itself that as much as they've done to design the park to have good traffic flow and so on, that there are going to be moments where a number of key events end at the same time, where they're going to be pinch points traffic-wise. And everybody's going to be trying to exit that stadium all at the same time. And holy crap, it's going to create a lot of traffic chaos. And we're going to undermine people's great experiences at the games up to that point. So we've got this big ambition, be best spectator experience of any Olympics ever. And now we've got this constraint, which is we've got traffic bottlenecks at critical periods. What's the can-if solution? And the can-if solution was something really, it's out of left field, as these things very often are, which was to introduce music into the Olympics. So everybody wants to leave. The 100 meters final has just finished. Great celebration. Fabulous. Let's all leave now. Whoa. Actually, we're going to put on some free music over here that's just sufficiently interesting for enough people to then go, wait a minute, let's stop and listen to the band a little bit. Over the other side of the Olympic Park, away from the main exit, is another band that's just started up. There's some reggae music playing, somebody's frying some hot dogs there, and half the crowd goes in that direction. So they were using music to do innovative crowd control. The reason that's a beautiful constraint is it actually made the experience of attending the Olympics and being a spectator better, because suddenly there's all these additional things and there's a party atmosphere and it's live music and it's free and it's great. So to introduce something new. So the question, that's a case study. There's several others that are about introducing something new into the category. That question forms a place to start. So you have a constraint. It's about something quite specific to your category. What would we introduce in the way that the Olympics introduced music that is out of left field a little bit into this category in order to open up a different avenue of thinking? So it's a little launch pad, the introduced launch pad. And if you look at this can-if map, so the can-if map is one of my clients called it the planets map, because it looks like there's a sun with 9 planets going around it. But
yes.
What if we fund it by? Are there novel ways to get access to money? That's the Brewdog story. What if we think of it as? What if we use other people to? What if we resource it by? What if we substitute? What could we remove? So again, you're facing this difficult propelling question. You've got a challenging constraint. You're not sure how to get started. Here is a series of launch pads that launch you into different kinds of conversations that you might not have had if you pursue the habitual path-dependent ways in which you've typically solved problems in the past. So it's new ways to solve it. And those are where the big leaps can come from, where suddenly you can see the problem in a new light and, you're off to the races.
I was having an enjoyable conversation a couple of weeks ago with your buddy Gary Hirsch, and your name popped up, not realizing that the two of you already had a connection there. But we were talking about the principles of improvisation, where most folks see them at play in improv comedy, but one of the foundational guidelines is called yes and it seems like can-if kind of overlaps with that, looking for kind of optimism bias, if you will, but looking at what can be out of this and build on it, as opposed to stopping it with no because or we can't because. So it's a very positive way of looking at how do we add value, how do we play up.
Yeah.
So as I was reading your can-if, I thought, hey, this is kind of improv put into functional ways of doing things on a bigger scale.
Yeah. So it won't surprise you now. You've talked to Gary and you know his work and you've read our book that I and some of my other partners at Eat Big Fish have trained quite a bit with the use of improv. It's a phenomenal tool for anything, frankly. It works in business. It works in your personal life. What I've learned from improv, I've probably learned more from studying improv and working with Gary at various times and his partner, Rob Poynton, than just about anything else. But one of the principles of improv, so if you're looking at a stage and 4 actors walk out on stage and the audience yells out, "You're at the fun fair, you're accountants, you've lost your watch, go." most of us would go, holy crap, what? I can't make something up out of that in the moment. But what an improviser does, he has the enormous confidence to say, each of those things is a phenomenal offer. We're at the fun fair. We're accountants. We've lost a watch. We all know we can create stories, amazing number of scenarios out of each of those offers. There's a kind of solution to how we tell a story based off that. Any one of those things. So the improvisers learn to see offers everywhere. Each of those is an offer. So it's an opportunity to start a story. We're accountants. Go. And I think one of the sort of mindset we believe it's possible, and the optimism bias that we talk about in the book, is just creating that sense in the team that yes, these constraints look limiting, but there's so many offers all around us if we choose to see them that way. What is the opportunity in the fact that we don't have anything? So many stories in the book where the fact that, you take the Virgin America story, which, they're launching an airline in the US. Costs a fortune to launch an airline. You've got to buy all those planes, right? They're $300 million a piece for those Airbus 320s that Virgin America flies. There's no money left for the marketing. And you could look at that and go, well, we're hosed then, right? No money. How do you launch a brand with no money? And what it forces them to do is to say, rather than focus on what we don't have, which is marketing dough, let's think about what we do have. What are the offers, as improvisers would call it, in the fact that we have a brand new fleet of Airbus 320s. What is an aeroplane? Apart from a way to get from here to LA. It's a set of captive eyeballs, right? It's the most captive eyeballs you're ever going to get. You're all in this aluminum tube flying from here to there. So the captive eyeballs, they're on our aeroplane. We're based in San Francisco. They start to see all the opportunities that exists from. So it's 2007, 2008. Twitter's just getting started. Well, we have this is the epicenter of social sharing. So we can't tell the world about our planes and how different they are, but all the people getting on the plane can. How do we, and they're all, users of Twitter and Facebook and Instagram and you name it. How do we activate that in them? Let's put something on the airplane in addition to the fabulous leather seats, the purple mood lighting, the seatback TVs, the menus on demand, the wireless, yada, yada. How do we give them something that they will have to share about? So the answer, of course, is, as anybody will conclude, we go to Victoria's Secret and we get them to do a fashion show in the sky. So we'll fly their supermodels to LA for their fashion show. While they're on the plane, we'll have them do this fashion show. Of course, everybody's taking pictures. They land in LA. They start sharing. The world sees the interior of a Virgin America plane for the first time through the social media of all these Twitterati that are happy to share. And, that began the process of making that airline famous. And there's a whole series of initiatives that they did as a result of having no marketing budget that forced them to be really creative and think in terms of what assets do we have, who will be interested in those assets. Let's go and create a partnership with them. That, no money, certainly insignificant amounts of money, change hands in those relationships because it's a win-win type conversation. So, that's the positive mentality towards seeing offers everywhere, is looking at what you do have instead of what you don't have. Look at the abundance that you've got all around you as opposed to the limitations, and start thinking about really new and novel and creative ways to trade that abundance with people who would want to get access for it and know what it is you want in return. So it just, it's a positive, optimistic, can-if attitude and orientation to the world that we're trying to create with this book.
It's one of the qualities that Virgin represents in my mind is a brand energy. I mean, they're an energetic brand. And you point out that a lot of people or buyers mentally or emotionally now are shorting brands to make room for more energetic brands in their lives in a way that's kind of similar to the way that investors short sell companies. That was an epiphany to me. That light bulb kind of lit up on the marquee in my mind. It seems like that's a concept that it's a great opportunity for creative visionaries to embrace and run with that idea of, we're shorting what didn't work so that we can make room for something that's on the horizon.
Yeah, so I want to give a shout out to John Gertzmer and his team at BAV, the Brand Asset Valuator guys, because that's their idea. This is a company that studies brands across all kinds of different